Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the President's Forum. We're delighted to have so many of our students, faculty, colleagues, staff, and so many alums and parents who are back here for the weekend. So we warmly welcome you here for a really interesting conversation with Rob for a little bit. We're going to be in conversation for some time, and then we'll kick it out to you for your questions. So this is the message to think of a really good question. But in welcoming Rob Karofsky back to campus, and his wife Ann also joins him here. So
she's over there.
Where are you, Ann? Welcome. It's so great to have you here. Obviously, as a graduate who's gone on to really important roles in business with his MBA as well, but really a perspective that is, as he has said to me over the course of our time together, rooted at Hobart and William Smith. And that's perhaps where we can begin for a conversation. But in so doing, as we welcome you all here, there's certainly someone particular to Rob that I would like to welcome, and it's Professor, former president, former provost, all of our friend, Pat McGuire. You know. So maybe, Rob, we could start there with Pat McGuire. We talk a lot here about Hobart and William Smith being a relationship-rich education that our students have with their faculty, with coaches, with staff members, with Geneva neighbors, and kind of the engagement in and outside the classroom. I know that Pat has been important to you, but bring us back to when you first came to Hobart and William Smith and what brought you here.
Sure. So this is really my opportunity, Pat. This could go two ways, but I'm going to take the nice path. So first, it's so great to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's taken me 30 years to get back here, and I didn't really know what I was missing until spending the day here, and I'm just so impressed with what you all have done. The growth of the school, probably most importantly, the growth of the students. So impressive, and the opportunity to be able to spend time today in a classroom. Part of that was a little unexpected, Tom. But then sitting around with a bunch of students that are interested in finance. And I have to tell you, I told Ann on the way back, I was really blown away by the caliber and the quality of students. You all should be very proud of yourselves and proud of Hobart. I'll get back to your question. So, I've been working for 30 plus years, maybe why I haven't been back here. And, went after working for a couple of years, went to the University of Chicago for an MBA, where I focus in finance and statistics. But when I look back, and I mean this with all sincerity, on really the most important person that had an impact on me, it's Professor Pat McGuire. I was, I think, a serious student, and I cared a lot, but I didn't know how I could be stretched until sitting in front of Pat with my special pen with 4 inks and these blue journals that I'll never write in a blue journal again, by the way, after that class. But he connected the world of economics for me. And, I use to this day what I learned in that class. But most importantly, in working closely with Pat during that class, but then doing an honors project together, the confidence that grew inside of me, I think, set me up to be successful after I left Hobart and William Smith. And, I had a special experience and a special relationship to this day with Professor McGuire, but I know that's not unique. And many of my friends, all of my closest friends, I went to Hobart and William Smith with, and, there are similar experiences. And even spending, 6 hours on campus today, and 40 minutes in Tom's class, you can see the impact that the faculty have on the students here. And this is just such a special place. And thank you for starting with that. That's
Sure.
a good opportunity.
No.
Now we don't have to talk about Pat again.
No,
But it was a life-changing experience, the ability to work closely with Pat McGuire.
And it was an honors project on Keynes and the New Deal?
We did an honors project. I feel like it was 50-50 contribution on John Maynard Keynes' impact on Franklin Delano Roosevelt as he crafted the New Deal. And I was explaining to students today, we didn't have computers or cell phones. And I was able to get a cage up on the third floor of the library because it required lots of books. And, we just really dug in and plowed through it. And, I wasn't really sure what I was doing at the beginning, but at the end, the passion towards proving what we set out to prove was just an incredible journey. And, it was life-changing.
And then into business school. How did that prepare you for business school, either Pat's class or some of your experiences?
I think, if I'm honest, my working life, when you come into an analyst program at Morgan Stanley from Hobart and William Smith, and 90% of the class is filled up with kids from the Ivy League schools, I'd be lying if, you didn't ask yourself, do I belong here? One, how did I get here? And two, do I belong here? And I think that, it's like the Malcolm Gladwell book, to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And I think that's so true because I did believe in myself coming through 4 years at Hobart and William Smith. I knew that I could compete. And, the rest was noise, and I just put my head down, and I outworked all of them. So,
And how important was athletics as a part of that formation? You're on the football team, I see Coach DeWall here. What role did athletics play?
I think, being part of a team is everything. And I draw on that to this day. I think, competing, practicing, understanding each other, losing together, correcting the mistakes you made together as a team, and then trying to build off of that. Those are lessons, from the football field or any sports field or court or rink. That were very relevant for me, spending 30 plus years on a trading floor, which is, not too far removed from a football field. It's gotten better, but, so those lessons and being a teammate, those are priceless. Understanding that, it's not, your own personal success. It's making everybody around you better. And I think that's something that definitely stuck with me over my career. And that's certainly something that I learned on the football field.
So you have an enormous job, enormous responsibilities, enormous presence within the firm, certainly nationally and globally with the firm. But you've also talked a lot about, or in addition, you've talked a lot about culture. And I was just thinking of that when you were talking about teamwork and so forth.
Yeah.
How do you bring that sense into your management?
Yeah. Well, culture is everything. You need an important strategy. But, the way I look at culture is that's how you execute the strategy. And, if you're not inclusive, if you're not collaborating, if you're not a good teammate, if you're not supportive, then you'll have a very short career. I don't care, where it is. And, developing and nurturing culture, mentoring, sponsorships, promoting diversity, all of these things, are so critical, especially in our industry where DE&I is not great. We're clearly not the role model. We don't resemble the population of the world, and that's something, from my perspective, that's held us back. Adding diversity makes us look more like our clients, more like corporate boards, gives us different insights. It's just such an important thing. We've improved, but we still, have a long way to go, and I think that's a critical part of building a culture as well. But yeah, I think that when I look back at the success of any organization, I think it all goes back to culture. And we just a little bit more than a year ago were part of the solution for Credit Suisse. And these types of bailouts, acquisitions are very, very complex, and we had 48 hours because if we didn't come to a solution before the market opened on Monday, it was going to be a really bad event. And the only other choice was for a insolvent wind down by the Swiss government, which would not have gone well. And when we think about what went wrong at Credit Suisse, people talk about culture, nefarious people doing bad things and sneaking around. That wasn't really necessarily the case there. It was much more of a business model issue, but that very much translates into the culture of their organization, very siloed, very disorganized. Products followed people, not where they would be best suited to be risk managed and things like that. So, when you think about how that ended there, and it was a very challenging 4+ years, a lot of it goes back to the culture that existed there in terms of the way they executed their strategy. And the challenge now is integrating that into our organization and making sure that they adhere to the way we do things.
And so that was a high wire act. I mean, just
You're telling me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little peek under the tent, or at least some of the takeaways that you have from that?
Well, I'll tell you the story. So, maybe I'm not the brightest person, but I had my entire management team in Hong Kong. So Asia is an extremely important market for UBS. We're generally considered the #1 firm across APAC, but particularly Northern Asia. And we're very overweight. And coming out of COVID, we really wanted to send a signal and have our investment banking management team assembled. Now, everything that was going on with the regional banks here, Silicon Valley Bank, we knew that it was a challenging environment. So I left one person. I had a designated survivor that I left back in London, who is our head of risk. But the entire team was in Hong Kong. So we had our management meetings during the day, and then at night, as things were starting to heat up with Credit Suisse, so I'd have to work all night. We had our group executive board meetings, and we were doing scenario planning and starting to talk about what our approach would be if we got a tap on the shoulder from the Swiss government. And it was that Wednesday night, so I was exhausted. I was on fumes. And my boss said to me, I need you back. And I was like, well, it's not like I'm in Boston, and this is a very confidential situation. So I'll fly back Thursday night, and landed in New York, and we were supposed to go on a skiing vacation the following week. But Anne was very understanding, repacked, and went to London on Friday. And so I was responsible for assessing all of the risks. They already took all of the risks in the investment bank and put it into a non-core unit. So they called it the capital release unit. And we needed to go through all of their risks in 48 hours and make a materiality assessment, which we fed into the chairman of the board that was negotiating the deal, to use that to get a government backstop, which we've since given back. So we were 48 hours straight, and we knew that if we didn't have a deal in place by 5 p.m. Swiss time, it was going to be a very ugly opening the next morning. Credit Suisse wanted nothing. They still thought they could go at this alone, which I can assure you absolutely was not ever really a reality. So, we went at it, and we struck a deal, and, it's been probably one of the most fascinating things that I've been involved with. You learn a lot. Two G-SIFIs merge once every 3 decades because of the complexity, the regulatory complexity, the legal entity complexity, the booking model complexity. We got through it, and now we're right in the middle of doing, significant integration. It's going well. It's been, a very, very interesting process.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just a couple more questions before we go out to the audience, but let's stay on you, and then we'll turn to the economy broadly. But give us a sense of your media diet. What do you wake up? What do you read every morning? How do you?
I thought you were making a comment about my weight.
Never.
All right, I don't work out as much as I should.
I'm with you.
Media.
Yeah.
So what do I do?
Because it's a global footprint. Obviously, you have to do.
So I've always done my job out of New York, but I've had global responsibility for a long time. So I've been running the global investment bank for about 6 years. Prior to that, I was running global equities, and I was running global equities at another firm prior. But I've always lived in New York, which I think is a good time zone if you have a family, because it's the last time zone, so you can actually get out of there. Around 6 o'clock, pretty much. Your phone's always on, but you have a family, you can get home, you can have dinner if you're not doing a client event. But the flip side is, you get up very early.
Right.
You get up very early to catch Asia before they go home. So, and I will get to the media. So, I get up very early. I'm generally in my office at around 5:15 every day, and I've been doing that forever. So I don't need an alarm anymore. And
5:15. Keep going. You woke me up here.
But it works for me, and I'm still the first person. So even though I'm in a different role now, I refuse to move my office off the trading floor. So I'm still on a trading floor because that's where I'm most comfortable.
And is that obviously intentional? You're making a statement.
Well, yes and no. My boss told me when he promoted me in 2018 that I needed to move to the corporate offices on a different floor.
Yeah.
And I told it probably wasn't a great career move for me, but I told him that if he was going to make me move my office, then I don't want the job. And he looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, no, I'm serious. I can do the job from here. And so, finally, I mean, he didn't have a choice. He already announced it, so I had a little...
Good negotiating.
I had a little bit of leverage.
Yeah.
But
why? What's about?
It's just where I'm comfortable. I love the buzz. I love to be able to walk around and talk to the traders. And I'm getting to your question.
Take your time.
So, I get in, and I'm still the first person on the trading floor every day. So
5:15.
Turn the lights on. And it's about an hour or so till other people, human beings, start. And so, my first call is Asia. And I talk to the head of risk in Asia, and he gives me a rundown on what's going on. And then I dive into Bloomberg. So Bloomberg for me is the main source of the information. And then we are a huge research and content house. So we're publishing, hundreds of reports every day. So there are specific ones that, more broad-based themes. And then, like anybody else, there's stuff that I'm interested in and stuff that I'm not interested in. So the stuff that I'm interested in, I'll get into in detail. And the stuff that I'm not interested in, I'll just give a quick look and hit delete. So, I've been doing it for quite some time, so it's pretty regimented, and it works for me. But Bloomberg, and then talking to, my senior risk managers, and then the 4 to 5 research reports that come out every day that are more general overviews. And it's more macro economic based. So, what's going on with the various parameters that are driving the markets every day. I'm very interested in volatility and skew and things like that. So, I love the derivative market. So, that's where I tend to focus.
So one more culture question. So what do you think your colleagues would say about Rob Karofsky? You're there at 5:15, an hour before mere mortals get in.
Yeah.
You've been doing that for some time. So clearly,
Yeah.
well, what do you think they would?
Well, what I hope they would say
Sure.
is that I care about them. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I come into work every day for 2 reasons. I'm still passionate about the markets and my colleagues. I love the people that I work with. And, it goes back to your sports question. We're a team, we're a family. The world's gone through a lot over the last several years. The pandemic, Russia invasion of Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East today, tensions with China, some idiosyncratic events that can be serious risk issues. And, you go through this. We have 12,500 people that are in the investment bank. There's 20 to 50 people that, you're going to battle with every day. And it's those people that keep me coming to work.
That's awesome. Well, let's turn to the economy. Just one more question before we go out. You must get asked this routinely. Where is the domestic U.S. economy? How do you see the strengths and kind of shoals ahead as we go into an election year, as we go into a lot of political challenges? But how do you assess?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are more qualified people in this room to answer that.
We'll
but,
cold call them.
Okay. So my flippant answer is the economy's strong and in good shape. We've had 4 consecutive months of non-farm payrolls, over 250,000 per month. I think the average is 275. We're sitting on historically low unemployment, and more people are joining the labor force. Consumers are in relatively, good shape, certainly. We're growing at around 2.5%. So I think, we've certainly, to this point, navigated a soft landing. And we're now in the middle of first quarter earnings, which are projected to grow year over year greater than 4%. It's probably will be potentially double that. So, the economy continues to chug along. Now, you're also sitting here with 12-month core CPI at 3.8%. And I think what Powell looks at more closely, 12-month average PCE, or personal consumption expenditure, is around 2.5%. So what does that mean? Is what we're living through, higher for longer. So, if you go back 3 months, we had 7 cuts priced in 2024. We're now at probably 1.5. So inflation's sticky. We have a situation in the Middle East, we talked about it in Tom's class today, where, we have, something happens to the supply of energy. A $10 increase in the price per barrel adds 40 basis points to headline inflation and 4 basis points to core. So, something like that happens, the Fed will have to rethink, their policy, but, for sure, no cuts this year. And the market's struggling with that. So, we're living with higher for longer. And by the way, there's a divergence in central bank policy where the US, which is the largest economy, is going more slowly. You have Europe, which is still looking at 3.5 to 4 cuts. And you can see now the result is a massive strength in the dollar. I think the yen is trading at 33-year lows. That's inflationary. It's problematic. And it's similar to European currencies as well. So they think that they're at a point where they want to ease. And now, they have a significantly depreciated currency versus the dollar. It potentially makes them rethink their policy. The U.S. is still the dog that wags the tail as far as that's concerned. So there's still a lot of uncertainty. I can tell you, I'm not smart enough to know how it's all going to play out, but I can tell you what we're looking at in terms of an inflection point. One is what I mentioned. Energy is very important now. And I don't think energy above $100 per barrel is sustainable. There's still spare capacity. Saudi Arabia is sitting on 75% of that. So, there is stuff that they can do. The U.S. reserves are very low, and I don't see Biden letting his foot off of that gas into the election. I mean, he's very incentivized to, keep that going, to keep gas prices at the pump down. But that's something that we're keeping a very close eye on. I don't see it flaring up. We walked in with 300 missiles flying into Israel, and there was a little bit of a reaction, but nothing material. We're very focused on China and Taiwan.
Yeah.
We see that as the biggest tail risk in the world. People haven't been focusing on it as much as they did, maybe 18 months ago.
Not just China and Taiwan.
China into Taiwan.
Yeah.
Would be more devastating than the financial crisis for sure, the systemic impact. We're very focused on positioning in the market. That ultimately drives everything. And, you can look that the markets are complacent given all of the headwinds out there, given that we're not too far off all-time highs. But, there's, private equity firms are sitting on over $1 trillion of dry powder. Due to very inactive, M&A markets over the last 2 years. Retail buys every dip. And, that's something that, is important. And systematic funds, are sitting on an underweight equity allocation as well. So there's a massive underlying bid in the equity markets should there be a wobble. So we're pretty, we're still constructive, and we think the economy's okay, but there's lots of things that keep us up at night.
Wow. That was awesome. That was a great answer. Let's go out to some questions. Tony, I think we have.
Thanks. Hi. Would you speak up a little bit louder? I'm having a hard time hearing you a little bit.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Here's my question. There's this sort of populist political idea that's risen up in the country. And economically, there seems to be a divide, a growing divide, between Main Street and Wall Street, right? Would you talk a little bit about how you see that from your perspective? Maybe you don't agree with that. But it seems to me that there's a real divide there. And it could even be threatening to Wall Street in some ways. So How would you respond to that?
Yeah, is this better?
Much.
Okay, sorry about that. My wife told me earlier that I was speaking too softly. She was right. Could you not hear anything I said? You could hear. Okay.
Let's start at the beginning. You were on the football team at Hobart.
My answer's going to be entirely different this time.
Let's go back to Pat McGuire. Yeah.
It's a great question. I think it's something that has existed for a long time. I think there's a lot of resentment. For Wall Street, I think, people think that we're greedy capitalists and unclear what services we actually provide to the world. I obviously feel differently about that. I think it's probably accelerated over the last, 2016. 8 years. Given the political environment and some of the political rhetoric and America First rhetoric that I think exacerbates some of that sentiment. But, some of the ill will towards Wall Street is appropriate. I think, there are bubbles that are created by greed and people chasing something that they know is going to end. And that happened in 2008. And, it's happened before. And I think that, there's been a significant regulatory change, which has probably the pendulum has swung too far. And this is a massive issue going on now where banks are going to be forced to underpin their businesses with significantly more capital. But I'll tell you what, somebody else is going to come in and pick up that slack. And, if you've all been reading about the proliferation of private credit, so it's just going to go, it's like water, right? It's just going to go find another place to go. And I still firmly believe that the products and services that are provided by investment banks is the right place to provide those products and services. But it has to be within the appropriate regulatory framework with the right amount of capital and skin in the game. And I do think that's changed. But I don't ever think that Main Street's ever going to love Wall Street. But I do think that it will get better over time. But, I think what happens in November has a lot to do with that as well.
Can I ask you one follow-up question? How does Wall Street feel about Main Street?
Well, I was going to say as long as we feel like we can make money, but that's maybe that's inappropriate. I think good. I don't think anything's changed materially. I think, if you go back to what happened with Reddit and GameStop, you remember, I thought that was a fantastic lesson for Wall Street to not underestimate Main Street. It was a humbling experience. I mean, it brought down a very, very large hedge fund. If you haven't seen the movie Dumb Money, it's worth an hour and 40 minutes, and it's pretty accurate. But I think that generally, I think the perception's good, humbling.
Awesome. Questions? Right here. Ray.
Hi.
Hello.
I follow up on the idea of different financial service products, which happened in such a fast pace, Bitcoin, fintech, and more to come. And so my question for you, the model of current banks in what you do and what you say inside your rooms, the popcorn rooms and the boardrooms. What you talk about, what you think about, as there's more technology evolving, specifically today, the modern one is AI. And as a customer and as an investor, we listen to and we watch what happens to other institutions that maybe aren't paying attention. So I'm questioning reports you discussed earlier. You had 2 days to do everything on Credit Suisse and come up with the risks involved. How could you possibly do that manually? And do you trust and can you depend on the technology you're using with the cyber security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so I sit here and I wonder, from your position, because you're in that position, what you hear inside your boardroom or inside on the floor, which is full of young people coming out of the campuses of Hobart and William Smith. They're a lot younger than the old people and the models up in the boardroom, and how they're keeping up and what they're talking about, how to keep up, and what happens if you don't.
Yeah, well, you asked an incredible amount in that question, so I'll try to unpack some of it. So, Bitcoin. So let's talk about Bitcoin for a second, and that's very. So, maybe someone can tell me, but a currency has to have, I think, three things. One's a store of value. It has to be easily transferable, and there's one more that I never remember. We don't necessarily consider Bitcoin a currency. Some people trade it and transact in their commodity area. We don't. We're not overly interested in cryptocurrencies. And the biggest reason why we're not incredibly interested in cryptocurrencies, first of all, at our firm, we're the largest global wealth management firm in the world. So we have lots of retail clients, a lot of Main Street, with $5.5 trillion of invested assets. And the biggest challenge, aside from not really understanding what the real value is the money laundering component to it. From a regulatory perspective, KYC, AML has been a massive, rightfully so, issue. And we have not convinced ourselves that being actively involved with cryptocurrencies is a prudent place for us to be, because it's not obvious to us we can control the money laundering risks. So I'll just speak for my firm and the conversations we have. And so we're not pushing that as a product. Now, I think that shows growth in the industry, because clearly, there's value that you can extract monetization from trading the product. It's very volatile. And you roll back before the financial crisis, it would have been, Me Too, and we would have followed along and, tried to keep up. Most of our competitors have a similar approach, although some of the U.S. banks have been a little bit more aggressive, but it's still not a huge part of the business. And, all the big U.S. banks just reported first quarter, and you don't hear anything about making money from cryptocurrency. Now, the underlying technology, distributed ledger technology, is very interesting, and there are massive efficiency gains by the ability to be able to deploy that, particularly in back offices. But that does involve some experimentation with cryptocurrency. So to some degree, it's not going away. But, we're looking at it as a means to an ends from a, technology solution. So, that's our approach. And these are the conversations we have. And I think we've got a very reasonable, conservative approach. And, we weren't seduced by an opportunity to make a quick buck. Generative AI is completely different. I think, we're already using that in our businesses. It is some risk acceptance, right? I mean, if you think about a trading algorithm that's going and sourcing liquidity from 50 different venues in the US market, and it's learning from itself, you take the guardrails off. You have to, because it has to learn from itself. Now, there are various levels of controls we can put in place, but there is a bit of risk acceptance when you begin to experiment with some of these new technologies. But we take that very seriously, and we make sure that we have the right checks and balances in place, because a rogue algorithm has blown up a firm. Those of you, Knight Securities had some trading issues, and other firms have had material losses from inappropriate controls sourcing liquidity around the world. But we think generative AI is incredibly meaningful and important. It's really an efficiency, productivity tool that will make us all better in what we do. Now, the funny thing is, my management team sitting around the table, 50 plus people, 50-year-old plus people, and we don't have a clue what it really is. So what we did was, to your point, we went to our younger generation, and every one of my management team, including me, has a reverse mentor of someone that's, the only parameter we put on it, they have to be less than 30 years old. And so I'll meet with this person, once a month, for an hour. We end up talking about the same stuff over and over because I don't understand, so maybe we should meet more frequently. But, it is a way of, leveraging, a different generation that grew up in a different, age with technology to teach us. And, but AI is, I think is going to be a meaningful step change in efficiency in terms of how we do our business. And we're already embedding it, as I mentioned, in algorithms. I think I gave an example today, in our leveraged capital markets business, which lends money to private equity firms that, buy another company. We're using generative AI to identify targets. And then once it's identified a target, it will create a pitch book for the banker, and then they can go to the company. Now, as I said before, we don't just take it off the printer and, we read it and go through it and make sure that, there isn't anything inappropriate going on. And I can give you 10 examples of, how we're, embedding AI and generative AI in our businesses to make them better. And it's going to increase at an increasing rate. That's incredibly important. But there's an unknown element to it, and it's a little scary. So those are some of my thoughts. Hopefully I answered
That's awesome.
most of your questions.
Reverse mentorship. I love that.
It's incredibly
It's
impactful.
so fascinating.
Yeah. And it energizes the younger.
So it's your senior team.
So I have
Everyone's
12 people on my management team, and all 12 of them, and I check, they meet with somebody to talk about only AI.
It's the same person.
Each person has a person.
Yeah.
I have a person.
Is that
I
person?
have the best person.
Oh, yeah. So what happens? You call this person, you said, I want you to be my mentor. I know you're 29 years old. I'm the president of
Well, if I'm honest with you, my chief of staff called for me.
yeah.
So we had somebody.
Let's get off the phone saying.
So we do have a lot of, really intelligent, quantitative people, and they helped us identify who they thought the right people would be, and then somebody just paired them up.
I see. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Questions? Any questions? Where are we looking around? Right there. You.
My name is Denzel Silver. I'm a sophomore in class of 2026.
Would you like to be the mentor to Rob?
So
Take your
one
chance,
of
yeah.
one of my questions was actually related to that. So like as a young person who kind of understands that field more, what would you say is the best way to like go about putting yourself out to like the president of a company such as yours?
Oh, I think you just did it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a tough one. I think that the first thing is get yourself to a firm, obviously, and then I think once you're in the firm, it's really showing aptitude and intellectual curiosity, and really talking about it and networking, and then I think that we'll figure out how to identify you or the right people to be part of the this process. But I do think we're generally very good at that, identifying the right people for the right challenges. We spend an enormous amount of time on talent development and making sure that we're getting people opportunities when they're ready for them. So I think the most important thing is putting your head down and learning and contributing and showing an aptitude for a specific skill set, and more often than not, we're pretty good at identifying and then making sure that they're included in the process. Yeah, we're not perfect at it, but the amount of time we spend on talent development is very surprising to most people as they come in, an enormous amount of time, because we don't make an airplane wing or a jet. We're all about human capital, intellectual property. That's our business, is our people. So we spend a lot of time and an enormous amount of money on that. So we're pretty good at identifying the right people.
So the best way to get noticed is to do your job.
Do your job.
Yeah.
I said this earlier. I think so. Some people are going to roll their eyes at me, but I can say it because I have kids all your age, and I do think that with the younger people coming into the business now, my first advice I always give them is don't worry about what your next job is. Because I find that happens quite a bit. People are really chomping at the bit for what's next. The most important thing is doing what you're doing exceptionally well and doing it better than anybody else. And trust that the organization will pay attention and then pick that person and give them the opportunity when we feel that you're ready for it. And again, it's critical for us to do it because that's how we grow our firm, we grow our organization, we grow our talent, we grow our diversity. It underpins everything, and I think that just really coming in and almost putting the blinders on and really focusing on doing what you're doing super well, and that will get you to the next opportunity faster than actually seeking it out. And I tell people this all the time. Some listen, some don't. But I've found the ones that progress their careers, at a faster pace are the ones that really do that.
Awesome. Other questions? Yeah, Andrew.
You want to have the mic, sure.
This is a far less academic question, but you picture Wall Street, you picture the trading floor, you think of papers flying everywhere, people's hair is messy, their tie is flying around. You talk about the pressure of doing that deal, the Swiss bank deal, or the next day would have been bad. I'm wondering what the bad days are like on the trading floor and if any particular stand out to you.
Yeah, my wife is smiling. I'm pretty good at leaving it in the office, but so what's a trading floor like? Trading floors have evolved. So when I started, we had paper tickets and a time clock, and a telephone, and a monitor with prices. We didn't have a computer. It was literally a trading monitor. You know what I'm talking about. And now, sometimes, still the big open space because you need salespeople to interact with traders and so on. But people can't see people anymore because the screens are normal. And I still have those screens in my office. So it's evolved. It's not as loud as it used to be. It's also gone through a maturation process, and people treat each other much better than when I started, which is good. It's come a long way. But it's still the same environment, and trading floors. For me, while I knew the first time I walked onto a trading floor that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my professional career, and I'm still exhilarated by that environment. Bad days. It's public information. So in 2021, there was a very famous blow-up of a hedge fund called Archegos. That was one of the biggest issues that Credit Suisse lost $5.5 billion. We were also involved, and Archegos was a prime brokerage client of UBS. And, working through that was incredibly, it was one of the most complex things. In some cases, it was more complex than, the Credit Suisse acquisition because we knew that it was going to be really bad for us, and it was going to be a material event. We were going to be sitting with unintended risk, and the entire market knew our position. It's like playing poker with, dealing up. And, risk managing through that. And I said to my wife, that Monday, going in, as just knowing how bad the day was going to be, it wears on you. You go through events like that over your career, and some can wash you out and just ruin your career and shake your confidence. And or a different approach is, it's a bad situation. Let's figure out how to resolve it, stick together as a team, lean on each other, not blame anybody, and get through it. And so, and you learn, I've had lots of bad trades over my career, bad decisions. And, you just kind of figure out how to compartmentalize, how to stay calm, how to, get support from your team, and then to support your team. And, there's time for finger pointing and doing a look across and, what went wrong? How do we miss this? Was there a control failure? There's time for that. But it's not while you're dealing with the situation. And understanding that as well is a critical lesson that I've learned over my career. There's lots of time to second guess, and it's my hair gets messy sometimes.
Well, we have one last question before we wrap up. I guess we have so many students here, Rob, and you spoke about the importance of Hobart and William Smith, your education, went off to business school in your career. Give our students some advice.
You couldn't be at a better place. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. First of all, I'm a massive believer in liberal arts education. I think, the world has moved to, applied mathematics and data science, and all of those things are incredibly important skill sets. But what you learn at a liberal arts education, one, I think, is a lost skill set, and that's how to write. How to express yourself, how to articulate a position, a business plan, and the other is to be able to think critically. And I am convinced that there isn't better preparation for those two things, which are incredibly important, than a liberal arts education. And Hobart and William Smith is I mean, I can't say enough great things about it. And, I learned so much here that I still use day in and day out that I don't even think about. I mean, I can't tell you how many emails I get from the most brilliant people, and I feel like I need an Enigma decoder to understand what they're telling me. And it happens more often than not. You're reading, year-end reviews from people, and, it really is. And I think that, don't focus on what you don't think you're getting, that you may get somewhere else that's more technical or more, there's plenty of time. You have long careers. There's plenty of time to pick up things that you want to further solidify or build upon to round out your skill sets. I did that, I went to a very theoretical, business school to really focus on finance and probably more importantly statistics, because I thought that was something that would benefit me, but not at the expense of the real core building blocks that I believe you can get at liberal arts education. And Ann and I we let our 3 kids make their own decisions on where they went to college. But if we did have a little bit of influence, it was pushing them into liberal arts. And fortunately, all 3 of them, either went through or are going through that. And to see their development is something that makes us really proud. So you're at a tremendous place, and some kids may have an easier time getting to that next step, maybe not, but there's nothing that hard work and perseverance and grit won't compensate for, and that is no excuses. This place is phenomenal, and the growth that I don't think I'd get in here now, and the caliber, the questions I got today. I mean, somebody asked me a question about Basel III implementation. I was blown away, and sitting in Tom's class and the questions, it's just awesome. So keep going. Be proud of where you are, and you can do anything from this school, and I'm proof of that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, that was awesome. Well, we are.
I hope you guys heard that, because that was the most important thing I said.
I know. We are proud of you. At Hobart and William Smith, the mission is to prepare students to lead a life of consequence. We invoke it. We think about it a lot. The faculty thinks about it for the curriculum. All of us, that's the mission. And it's a genius mission because it's an individualized conclusion as to what is a life of consequence. But certainly you embody that with your leadership, the culture you're building, your generosity in coming back here with Ann. We're delighted to have had you here, spending time in Professor Drennan's class and with all of us here. So join me again in thanking our great graduate class. That was awesome. Thank you. That was awesome. Well done.